Hey folks, Mythical DM here. Well, Paizo has released their remastered product first wave with the player core and the GM core rulebooks. Now, something that many people may not be aware of is that Paizo has a subscription program where the main rulebooks can be purchased as kind of an ongoing subscription, and once the warehouse ships it, the PDF is released to you. The PDF is included in the subscription price, which usually covers the cost of shipping, at least to Canada. Now, this also has a linkable discount on Fantasy Ground and Demiplane's Pathfinder Nexus, which is kind of a nice bonus. So if you're thinking about picking up the rulebooks, this is a great option. I'll also be heading to a local game store for the line art covers as well, but I'm an oddity when it comes to that sort of thing. I like to have that kind of book. Let me know in the comments below if you also spend extra money on things like alternative covers. I plan to shelve and display the line art covers and use the basic cover books in my regular games. So let's start chatting about the Pathfinder Remastered, shall we? In this video, I want to cover some of the top changes that I'm very happy about in the player core rulebook. I'll have another video out soon with things I think they may have missed or I do not agree with later in the week. So remember to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell for notifications on new videos. As well, if you want to speak with me directly about the remastered game or game mastering in general, you can hit up my new Patreon, which gives exclusive access to channels on my Layers Inc. Discord, which I am monitoring daily. Okay, on to a list of the positive changes. And these are not in a least to best order or anything like that, just as things came over me. The first thing is the removal of alignment. So how many times have you had a player say, I'm just playing my alignment as an excuse to be an asshole at the table or ruin a storyline that you have spent months on? I am so sick of that. And the removal of the axis of good, bad, lawful chaos has been replaced with something Paizo was already using for their religions, edicts and anathemas. Now, each ancestry has some suggestions. Religions still have their dogmas, but now your character can choose their edicts, the values they hold dear to them, and the core of their being, and the anathemas, the things that they're so offensive they would never allow it or would have some deep role playing that can come out of it should they allow it to happen. Now, one of the things that devs have said is that the values change over time, and so can your characters. They may be put in situations where on paper they've written down that they would act a certain way, then over the course of a campaign they've changed their worldviews. I absolutely love this. People grow, evolve, and change their worldview as we get older, mostly, and so can the character. For clerics and likely champions in Player Core 2, this allows them also to sanctify themselves as holy or unholy depending on their deity. Some deities specify which one a PC must pick if they decide to sanctify themselves. Others, well, they go both ways. Again, I love that even deities are not restricted to being lumped in as either good or evil, and this puts a lot of roleplay and storytelling at the fingertips of the game master. The next up is the aid action changes. So aid was an action that just really wasn't used. It had such a high difficulty that at low levels, it really wasn't worth trying it. And it's pretty meaningless at high levels where player stats and proficiencies just kind of removed the necessity of it. For the most part, everything has stayed the same, but what has changed is the DC has dropped to 15 from 20. So this is way more reasonable at low levels where aiding can be way more use. Now at higher levels, the DC could be too low, but as a GM, you can set the target higher. There's a DC chart for higher levels, so you can adjust this as needed. I think the change is way better for low level parties. All right, next up, Disarm Changes. So this new Disarm really has me looking at playing a fighter or rogue that specializes in taking weapons away from the bad guys. Previously, the success condition of the athletics attack to remove the weapon would result in a -2 circumstance penalty for the target to attack with the item, and you get a +2 circumstance bonus to further attempts to disarm. Pretty useless as it only lasts until the start of the target's turn, and then the penalties would go away. Now, the success condition penalties and bonuses stay on the target until they spend an action to interact with the item to get a firm grasp on it. This is such a huge thing. On some of the big bads, they may not be as tactically minded, and they may just take the -2 and continue swinging. Others will want to take that action to clear the condition, removing one action of the 3-action economy. That really makes taking feats that lean into disarming way more tantalizing. Next up, the removal of spell schools. So I've said this before in other videos, and I think it bears repeating. I love the removal of spell schools. The issue with traditional schools, such as enchantment, illusion, necromancy, etc., is that many of the spells could fall into one or multiple schools. It really kind of limited spell lists in some ways and overpopulated others. Now the spell schools are really that, schools of magic. You were trained formally at a college of sorts, and your spell list grows from that. One thing to remember when you look at the arcane schools in the core rulebook is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. You can work with your GMs to create your own curriculum. Add spells that you think fit your theme. There really is no limit to what spells players and devs can add to the game to fit a theme. And again, you need to remember that these are not the only spells you can learn. These are just choices that you add to your spell book as you gain levels. At first level, a wizard knows 5 cantrips, and 2 of these are from your curriculum. The other 3 are up to you. Same thing goes for each level where you gain access to new spell ranks. The next thing is the clarification on recall knowledge. So recall knowledge was always this odd skill. Not as in what is it, but more of adjudicating what the player gets for attempting the role. Now there are some example questions that players can ask a GM. The GM determines the DC, and this can be done by using the chart of the creature's level and then modifying it by the rarity, but I'll get into that in another video. But now this really breaks down what type of skills, arcana, lore, occultism, etc., can be used on these creatures, and then what the player's trying to recall. Remember that technically in game, the player is still trying to recall some facts with about 2 seconds to think about it. A round is 6 seconds. 3 actions per round means roughly 2 seconds per action technically. Recall is a single action, so in theory, they're trying to figure out something in 2 seconds. But, I digress. Now, there are a good list of questions that the players can look over to get an idea of what to ask the GM. This is a great third action in a player's turn, even if they use it on the first action, but you follow what I'm trying to say. All right, next up, swap item and reposition actions. Reposition is a new athletics action that allows you to forcefully move a creature 1 size larger than you, more if you have Titan Wrestler, 5 feet or 1 square, or 10 feet or 2 squares on a critical success. So a bad guy backs into the corner. Well, the fighter just comes over, attempts an athletic check against the fortitude DC of the target, and if they succeed, they move him over a square. Critically, they move him 2. I would allow PC to move the target diagonally through their own square on a crit, because that would be 2 squares. Then your bad guy is ripe for a flank with the rogue. I love the tactics of this. And remember, monsters can do this as well. So you don't want everyone to be flanking your troll. Have them pick up someone and move them around the map. Fun times, hilarity ensues. Swap item is kind of buried on page 268 under the interact in equipment. It is referenced under interact, but only as a page reference. So not as handy as it should be, and this could be overlooked. So this now allows you to put away one item and draw another in the same action. This is a huge quality of life improvement for players, as action economy in a battle is a massive concern. Next up is versatile heritages. I love the addition of the changeling, the Nephilim, and the mixed heritage, which are uncommon, so players need to speak with their GMs first. You can add them to your ancestry. So a halfling changeling, or an elven Nephilim, or just have a mixed ancestry, such as a half-elven Avurian, or mix in some orc blood with a Dromar. The flexibility again just shows why I love Pathfinder system over D&D. From the player core rulebook on page 74, play a character with a versatile heritage. First select your ancestry, just like you would any character. You gain hit points, size, speed, attribute boosts, and attribute flaws, languages, traits, and other abilities from that ancestry. Then, instead of choosing a heritage from those normally available to that ancestry, apply your chosen versatile heritage. You gain all the features from your versatile heritage, some of which might modify or replace statistics, abilities, or traits from your ancestry. So as an example, you could pick a goblin as your ancestry, then pick up Slag May Changeling heritage. Then when you get ancestry feats, you can pick from either the goblin or the changeling. Again, it's absolutely wonderful depth that you can bring to a character. It's options like this that allow an absolute insane amount of character customization and role play. So well done, Paizo. I cannot wait for the awakened animals in the Howl of the Wild due out next year. All right, next up, the athletic skill changes. One of the big changes of athletics is when you're attempting most of the sub actions of the skill, they use the multiple attack penalty with the agile trait, which is only a -4 or -8 instead of the basic -5 and -10. So this can include shove, trip, reposition, and grapple. Now I say may because if the action uses a weapon, it must have the agile trait to get those -4 and -8s. So again, it's a great little quality of life improvement for the game. All right, the last thing, death and recovery. I did leave this one for last as it could be considered a negative or a positive depending on your table. Now, according to the devs, this is just a clarification, and this is how the death rules were supposed to work all along, and are even referenced in other sources other than the original core rulebook. So a bit of background. When you're reduced to or below 0 hit points, you gain the dying condition. You're still at 0 hit points, mind you, but yes, you can drop below 0. Anyway, when you're dying, you make recovery checks. Now, here is the thing. If you're healed by any amount, you lose the dying condition and add the wounded condition. So the first time you're dropped and brought up, you have wounded 1. If that happens again, you'd be wounded 2 and so on. So when you're dying, you add the wounded number to your dying number. Again, if you already went down once and go down again, this would be dying 2. Dying 1 plus wounded 1 equals dying 2. A dying 4, you are dead unless you have feats like Die Hard that increase dying to 5. Okay, so here is the new ruling or clarification that everyone is kind of losing their minds over. If you're dying 1 and wounded 1, that is a value of 2. If you roll your recovery check, that would be a DC 12 flat check, meaning you roll the dice, you add no modifiers to the roll, and you get an 11, you increase your dying condition by 1 plus your wounded value, which in the above example would be another 1. Well, 2 plus 1 plus 1 equals 4. You're dead. That can be pretty rough. Here's the other issue. If you take damage, you increase the dying condition by 1. 2 if it's a critical hit or you critically fail, like a saving throw or something like that. Now, if you have persistent damage happening, a dying value of 2 plus a wounded value of 1 means you may be dead at the end of your next turn. If you are dying 2, wounded 1, and fail your check, you die. If you succeed, you become dying 1 and you're still wounded 1. Then the persistent damage happens, and then you are dying 2 again and still wounded 1, meaning you are once again on the threshold of dying on your next turn. So this could be a nail biter for many PCs. Remember that dying usually has no bearing on a monster. They die at 0 hit points and you just move on. This issue affects players only. Can this be very harsh? Yes, for sure. Does it mean you should shy away from it? No, you do not have to, but speak with your table. I like a bit more fear of death in my campaign. This also really means that your players need to play a bit smarter than just allowing one PC to take the brunt of the attacks, or some players need to know when they have to get the hell out of dodge and heal up. Having a player or two with battle medicine as well as a healer is really important. Can you do without it? Sure. Will death be more likely? Possibly. This is a game of dice, chance, and statistics, so anything can happen and your dice hate you, well, then you're dead no matter what. So this is a very interesting change for Pathfinder, or clarification for it. Whether it's better or whether it's worse for your table is up to you and everyone at the table. So you as a GM may want to speak with your players first before using it as written. If you do not want to use it, use the original version. It's your table. Play the way that your group finds the most fun. If you're starting a table, this is a topic to add to your slot 0 questions. That's it for me today. I would love to hear in your comments what changes you're excited about. What are your thoughts on the recovery check rules update? Will you use them in your game? Why or why not? Remember that everyone's opinion is subjective. No need to criticize anyone for their play style and if it's working for them and their table. In the meantime, in between time, that's it for my overview of the Pathfinder Remastered positive changes. I'll be back with more videos going over more changes, clarifications, and other topics in the next video. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and even hit that bell for notifications. And if you like my content, check out the Patreon page linked below for special channel access to my Discord. Thanks for hanging out with me, and may all your games be full of myth, mirth, and magic. Bye for now.